Now, in the first quarter of 2024, the amount of funding for tech startups in Africa fell by 47% year-on-year to $466 million. The equity portion, which made up about 70% of the total, fell by the same margin to $332 million, while debt fell by 46% to $132 million. 87% of the funds of African tech startups went to the Big Four. Nigeria led the way by 35% and 87%, followed by Kenya, South Africa, and Egypt. Looking at sectors that attracted tech startup funding in Africa in Q1 2024, transport and logistics led the way, followed by fintech, agriculture, energy, and healthcare. Joining us now from our Abuja studios is a player in the Agri-Tech space, Deina Mayaki, who is CEO of Agriarche. Deina, it's a great pleasure to have you this morning. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Great. Well, let's begin.
Thanks for having me.
You're most welcome, Deina. Well, let's begin with your perception and understanding of the funding landscape for African startups, and why do you think we saw a decline in the first quarter of this year?
Thank you for the question, and good morning again. Just as there's a global warming, there's an increase in global warming across the world. I think there's a ripple effect on the funding climate. And this is because what we saw in the statistics you just read was that there was a huge drop of about 50% between last year, Q1 2023, and also this year, 2024. So when you compare both, we had a huge 50% decline. And we're saying this, that aside from the macroeconomic challenges that we have across currency devaluation, higher interest rates, inflation, layoffs, and then also the startup graveyards that we saw last year, including the shutdown or the closing down of some of the banks like Silicon Valley Bank, and all of the liquidity inflow from the American banks that have been funding startups. So we expected that shock. But now startups have been able to adopt conservative capital raising strategies, and prioritizing cash efficiency and so on. And again, VCs are a bit more sensitive right now. Due diligence has toughened, and it is expected, right? They are operating more like traditional banks, although more tech focused. And we also have, while banks are insisting on net profitability, I think the VCs right now are insisting on profitability, at least gross profitability. So the funding climate has thickened. It's a situation of survival of the fittest right now, and yeah, that's what we've seen. In the African funding landscape today. Thank you.
Survival of the fittest. I mean, it's quite a myriad of factors playing a role there. But what do you make of the funding dominance of the Big Four? And for our viewers, of course, we're referring specifically to a number of countries there: Nigeria, Egypt, South Africa, Kenya.
Oh, the Big Fours. I mean, this has been on the news, and this has been buzzing for the past few weeks, ever since the reports came out. I would say unquestionably fiscal and non-fiscal incentives for VCs to invest in the financial and tech ecosystem across these major continents will encourage more VCs, right, to participate in these continents. Alongside the frameworks, the legal frameworks, the financial frameworks, the technical know-how, availability of talented and sophisticated talent. Also, a lot of funding has to do with their strategy, the fund size, the ticket size of the business, the stage of the business. VC experts will say there are lesser companies available for the funds that are available to VCs to invest. So when I see the Big Fours, I see people in Africa who are more structured to receive the kind of investments that are geared towards them. And again, from empirical data, you see that VCs will want to invest in these startups in the Big Fours because of the reasons I mentioned earlier. And also from there, it can trickle down to other, more early stage startup ecosystems across West Africa and the rest of East Africa who haven't attracted this sort of funding before. Again, the media frameworks around the ecosystem also contribute a lot to how funding navigates within the entire African ecosystem. Thank you.
Right, so this is more of a structural dominance in many ways. Now, you in the agricultural space and the amount of funding it attracted into the continent in Q1 came in at around a third behind transportation and fintech. Should agriculture be attracting more funding, in your opinion?
Definitely, yes. I think that agriculture claims to have about 60 to 70% of the African population employed by it. Agriculture claims to contribute over 30% to global GDP. Now, looking at Africa, Nigeria claims to have about 24% contribution to GDP. Although a lot of it is informal, but agriculture should attract the necessary funding. I'm sure you ate today before you came to work, so and that's a result of the process of the work done in agriculture. Again, I know that there was a report by PwC that says that less than 3.8% of commercial bank funding or funding went into agriculture. It's just we need to prioritize the funding that is coming into agriculture. And you see, yes, the government can quote a 2015 subsidy program and then a 2020 to 2022 or 2023 anchor borrowers program that was done, but the capital in itself isn't the problem. It's the way it is structured and delivered, by whom to who, and how it is, how it later on turns into the results that affect the food ecosystem in Nigeria. So yes, definitely, if we really are serious about feeding the nation and being self-sufficient in food, then we should invest in agriculture. Very important, because Africa in itself has over 78 million hectares. Some literature will say 60 million hectares, arable land. And it's underexploited. So yes, if we need to, and I understand that the financial ecosystem is more optimized for funding, but then if you need, and this is where technology comes in, so that we can come up to speed and be ready for funding. Thank you. Right.
It certainly sounds like a no-brainer, Deina, but what would you say some of the key stumbling blocks are to getting more funding to tech startups in the agricultural sector? You've highlighted, you've touched on a couple of them right now, but what really is standing in the way here?
Again, I'll say that the agriculture sector is a bit informal. It's very informal, it's very vague, very disorganized, highly fragmented, and this promotes lack of visibility across the entire ecosystem. And agriculture is beyond farming, right? It's from it entails production, and when you talk about production, you want to talk about distribution, and you also want to talk about logistics and last mile delivery, processing and last mile delivery, and then you're talking of hard tech and soft tech along the line, and this is where I advocate for technology, right? Because technology helps to enhance visibility as long as it is promoting efficiency and profitability for the ecosystem actors like the farmers. So, and I know that one of the challenges is this vagueness that we see today. So people are not confident, first of all, to structure the financing for the ecosystem, and also to know exactly what the needs are. Financing is a major bottleneck. I can attest that, or I can say that a hectare of rice today costs over ₦1 million to that's like the cost of production for a hectare of rice. And you can imagine if a farmer is able to afford a hectare of rice, that means he's a millionaire invariably. So what I'm saying is that part of the hurdles that we see is the lack of access to finance. Not that the finance is not available, but the access is a bit, inhibited. And then when you talk of technology know-how, you have to, do a lot of capacity building, which often has a lot of operational dependencies and train a lot, so it often takes time. Insecurity is also a major challenge. Concerns around insecurity in major rural areas where agricultural activities take place. And yeah, farmers today are the major actors, and they are economically excluded. And I would like to say that economic exclusion when I mean economic exclusion, I mean that they are digitally and financially excluded. So they have no way to connect to these global opportunities. And then if you are not available on the credit system for somebody who is probably in San Francisco or New York or somewhere in the capital city of Abuja to have access to that information, and on the basis of that, have the confidence to lend to you, then it just cripples the entire financial inflow into the sector. And this happens for one farmer and it goes on to 1 million farmers and 30 million farmers.
Right, very cogent points there.